After Lucas led his troops and finished the war, he brought back neither any men nor any women. His brain was injured, causing him to lose his memory. He had forgotten the 5 years we spent together and also forgot about the young prince I gave birth to for him. His memories were stuck in his ambitious teenage years. Hearing this news, I changed into casual clothes. I went to the regent's residence to visit him. Little did I know, I happened to overhear him plotting a rebellion with his trusted confidant.
The throne is unstable, and the young ruler is too weak.
Why don't we lead our troops to surround the imperial city and force that dog emperor to step down?
As he spoke, his eyes shone with brightness as he made his grand vows. He didn't seem to notice the looks people were giving him. Those looks were hard to describe. His personal guard, William, was pushed forward and struggled to speak up.
5 years ago, didn't you take over the imperial city and insist on giving it to the current young emperor? You also said it was a wedding gift. We've urged you countless times, but you insisted on your own path, eagerly promoting him to power. Now the child is born. Why are you trying to turn back the clock?
Hearing this, Lucas froze in place, his grand ambitions suddenly stuck on his face.
You did this once before.
No. Who is he anyway? Why should I give up the imperial city? I conquered to him.
A wedding gift? Are you kidding me? Am I in love with his queen or something? No way. I will never give up power that's already in my hands for a woman.
Lucas began studying literature at 3 and martial arts at 4. He had wanted to take control of his own life since childhood. After learning about the court's corruption and incompetence, he decided to overturn the rule and become someone great himself. How could he ever accept the idea of handing his fate over to others?
You don't have a secret crush on the queen.
William paused for a moment, finding it harder and harder to speak. Yet Lucas's expression brightened considerably. It wasn't because of affection, you know.
You actually have a public crush on the young emperor.
Yes, an open crush. Before Lucas lost his memory, everyone in the palace knew how he felt about me. The imperial bed had almost become his personal territory. Every night, he found new ways to lie on that bed. With a cheeky smirk, he would tease,
Your Majesty, your loyal subject is here to serve you for the night. You must be gentle with me. I'm so scared, Tilda.
With his robes half dropped, revealing his firm, tan chest, he added,
If we do this, will the queen's sister get angry? Really? Really not.
I stood there watching Lucas act the fool on that imperial bed, feeling completely speechless. He may be the powerful regent prince to the outside world, known for being serious and steady, but when we're alone together, he acts like a fox who has cultivated supernatural powers. He gets insanely jealous and loves to put on a show. Don't even mention the queen's sister. Not even a female mosquito is allowed in my harem. Otherwise, my back would be put to the ultimate test. But right now, Lucas has no memories and is just acting with pure youthful spirit. He looks like he's about to explode.
Impossible? How could I possibly like that dog emperor? I certainly don't have a preference for men.
Seeing Lucas's face turn darker and darker, the guards, fearing they would be blamed by association, immediately pulled the bookshelf behind him out of the way.
This entire row is your collection. If you don't believe me, feel free to open it and check.
Lucas took a deep breath. He glanced at William and clenched his teeth as he spoke.
Even if I've lost 5 or 6 years of memory,
I still trust my taste. You must have collected many masterpieces and rare private treasures. Shoo!
He opened it with great confidence. The first drawer, half a piece of cake. The second drawer, a hair ribbon. The third drawer, a few Sichuan peppercorns. Lucas frowned.
What on earth are these things?
However, everyone else just looked at them with a sense of familiarity. William let out a sigh. He has been by the regent's side longer than anyone else. They grew up together and were fellow martial arts students in their youth. He had already spotted the panic in Lucas's eyes.
Don't look at them like you're staring at garbage. You said back then that these are proof of your love for each other.
Oh.
And a word of advice. Stop calling him that dog emperor so much. Normally, it's you who tries too hard to act like the dog in front of him.
Lucas immediately refuted upon hearing this.
I'm not the type to be attracted to men, and I certainly wouldn't let anyone treat me like a dog. William, Are you just making this up out of spite because we've known each other since childhood?
Oh. The moment the Regent's pressure came down, William pulled back considerably. But he still didn't give up trying to persuade Lucas.
You don't remember liking him. Then do you recall the young prince? He is your son, after all.
Lucas's response was the sharp sound of a sword being drawn from its sheath. Squeak. His eyes narrowed slightly as he placed the blade across William's shoulders.
Do you really think I wouldn't cut your head off?
Once the sword was out, everyone immediately fell silent. Even William obediently raised his hands in surrender.
Fine. I won't say more about this. I only hope you don't regret it once your memory returns.
Lucas let out a cold snort.
Less talk.
Due to his show of force, everyone abandoned their attempts at persuasion. Instead, they all focused on discussing how to break into the Imperial City and use my head as a sacrifice flag. During their heated discussions, they would even start arguing amongst themselves. Satisfied with this outcome, Lucas smiled.
What's the point of being a regent? If I'm going to be ruler, I want to be emperor.
I stood outside the door and heard everything. I felt a chill run down my arms and legs. Fortunately, having been an emperor for so many years, I was far from unprepared. If he wants a fight, let it be. Back then, he took one step back to lift me onto the throne, so I always yielded to him, even taking on a difficult burden just because he wanted it. I took the fertility pill and gave birth to his child. This time, I don't need him to yield. I will secure the throne myself and no longer owe him anything. Thinking of how he kept calling me, Dog Emperor, made my head throb with anger. Fine, if you have the guts, keep yelling it. Love can be discarded. But imperial power must remain in my hands. I glanced coldly at the rebel subjects arguing heatedly and turned to leave. Just then, a deafening crash shattered the night's silence. Turning back, I saw that eunuch who had always followed me was kneeling frantically beside my feet after bumping into the flower bed. At this moment, he was kneeling tremblingly at my side in a state of deep fear.
Seize the intruders outside.
Lucas's voice was stern and cold, filtering through from behind the window. Since I've already been exposed, I have no intention of hiding anymore. I walked into the room with a calm air. Scanning the room, those loyal attendants turned awkward when they saw it was me. They know about the bond between Lucas and myself, and they also recall how unhinged Lucas became for my sake back in the day. Even though Lucas is untamable, domineering, and holds great power at such a young age, it might seem like he forced me, the Emperor, to bear his child. In reality, Lucas has always lacked a sense of security. He is always so careful, terrified that I might abandon him. Even when he was jealous or angry, all his extra energy would only be spent inside the bedroom. He almost broke the imperial bed apart. Then he would whisper over and over by my ear,
Brother, do you love me?
Will you always love me?
Will you still love me when I return from the morning court session? You haven't said I love you. To me all day. Sometimes I really feel like you just crave my big muscles and don't actually love me at all.
Asking the question, his eyes were bright, filled with hope and apprehension. Afraid of hearing a rejection, he tried to pick faults in himself first, waiting for me to argue back. There was once when I was too tired and not fully conscious. I didn't respond in time. He took that as hesitation, and tears welled up instantly. He looked so aggrieved.
Have you stopped caring about me as much as before?
He was incredibly clingy, acting like all his emotions were in my control. But now, the way he looked at me was cold and menacing. However, the moment he recognized my face, his ears turned red.
Who are you?
William stepped forward, just about to say something. Lucas shoved him aside and stared at me intently, his eyes shining.
A new strategist.
Are you married? Do you have someone special in mind?
Can you accept that your partner is a man?
William?
Good Lord. You were just ready to chop me off. Claiming you didn't even think you liked men yourself. What are you doing now?
Lucas shot me a fierce glare in response.
None of your business.
The previously tense and serious atmosphere suddenly dissipated. His question made me laugh in disbelief, almost with a touch of irritation. I truly forgot that right now? He was so much like the spirited young man I remembered from back then, confident and proud, with beautiful peach blossom eyes that shone brightly enough to blind you. Just like our first meeting, his ears turned red the moment he saw me. He was still naive and inexperienced when it came to matters of the heart. It felt like he was a completely different person from the Regent Prince later on, who used shameless tactics to climb into bed and begged for love with a humble demeanor. "I'm already married, and I have a lovely child," I answered him casually. Without blinking, I kept my eyes fixed on Lucas's expression, but then I saw those beautiful peach blossom eyes dim instantly. His entire demeanor radiated a sense of loss.
Your wife must be a wonderful person. Then, you really are lucky.
As he said this, Lucas felt a strange pang of envy for reasons he couldn't quite explain. Even his voice sounded rough and strained. After speaking, he suddenly realized something was off and froze in surprise. He couldn't understand why he felt so upset that his strategist had a family, especially since they were just meeting for the first time. How could his emotions be swayed by someone he barely knew? Yes, he loves me very much. Right now, all I wanted was to overthrow my superior and seize power for myself. I smiled and decided not to watch the comical sight of him looking so lost in a daze without even realizing it himself. It seemed Lucas wasn't faking his memory loss just to stage a rebellion after all. He must have truly suffered brain damage. I wasn't sure yet, so I would keep observing. Seizing imperial power was no easy feat. It had cost me my entire life. If anything were to pose a threat, I could not make any hasty decisions, so I walked straight toward the square table. Lucas's men saw me approaching and parted ways in perfect sync. Revealing a map placed on top of the table, the map was incredibly detailed, even marking secret passages within the Imperial City. I looked up at Lucas again and smiled.
Are you worried the Dog Emperor might escape? So you plan to ambush him in these secret tunnels?
When it came time for business, Lucas forced himself to perk up. He walked back over to the map and began explaining his plan. During this, I sat down, rested my chin on my hand, and listened intently, my expression growing darker. Lucas completely failed to notice the unusually quiet atmosphere around him. Seeing my interest, he spoke with great enthusiasm and excitement, occasionally letting out a disdainful huff.
All the people with the surname Chu are tyrants. The older ones are greedy and lustful, while the younger ones are arrogant and unreasonable. Not one of them is a decent person. People have been wanting to rebel for ages.
I gave a flat, "Oh." In response. Lucas, however, thought I was agreeing with him and nodded satisfactorily. He didn't notice his confidants at all, especially William, who was sending him secret signals with his hands flailing so fast, he looked like he was forming a spell seal.
Look here. There are several paths in the tunnels leading to the army camp. Do you know what this is for?
I played along. What's the
Left these passages on purpose to specifically send reports to the Gu family army.
Compared to those hypocritical members of the royal family? The common people actually trust us in the Gu family more.
No waka warm.
He hasn't even confirmed his identity as an advisor yet, and he's already showing off like a peacock. The Regent dares to say all sorts of things right in front of the young emperor. Does he really trust him that much? I continued to nod, looking at Lucas with complicated eyes, a young talent whose achievements overshadow his master. He is also incredibly popular among the people. How could I blame myself for being cautious? If he weren't one of our own, which emperor would feel secure sleeping with such a subject by their side? However, I had already been told all these things during those 5 years, back when the chaos first started in the Imperial City. Lucas, to ensure my safety, secretly stole me out of the palace through a hidden passage late that night. He knew I was a prince from the secluded palace. Once the fighting started, aside from him, almost no one would care whether I lived or died. I was still drowsy and sleepy. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw him standing in full military armor, ready for battle. At that moment, his expression had never been so serious before. Seeing me wake up, he leaned down and kissed my forehead gently.
Brother, if I die in this battle, you...
His voice was hoarse, filled with countless unspoken words that finally condensed into a single sentence.
Don't you dare forget me!
Thinking of Lucas's passionate confession, I became a bit lost in thought. He really treated me very well. Even though he was 3 years younger than me, he took care of me in every way. Even though he had conquered the Imperial City, he let me become emperor. He did this simply because he was afraid I would feel insecure and anxious. He feared others would mock or belittle me for my identity as a prince of the previous dynasty. So he was willing to take a subordinate position and support me. But at the very beginning, I simply did not like men. My feelings toward him were purely based on using him. But after Lucas saw me once at the palace banquet, he kept finding reasons to come find me. Like a pampered, pretty lapdog, he would circle around me, calling out, "Brother," with such eagerness and enthusiasm. His voice was both obedient and sweet. He showed no trace of the arrogance or recklessness that people outside were claiming. I thought it was just a rumor, until I caught him pinning other princes to the ground and beating them up. It was only because they insulted me as an illegitimate outcast unworthy of appearing in court. But Lucas acted too rashly by openly beating up princes. Even with the Gu family's immense power and influence, such open violence could not be justified. After all, even an emperor needs to maintain his dignity. It would be better to handle things behind the scenes quietly. That way, even if everyone knew who was responsible, they would remain silent due to fear of the Gu family's military power and the need for peacekeeping. Now, Lucas has been dragged by the old general to kneel before the emperor as punishment. I cursed him silently in my mind for being a fool, not wanting to watch him suffer any longer, and just about to turn back. I saw him return unharmed. That was the first time I truly understood the importance of power. It was also the first time I did not refuse Lucas's closeness. He, unaware of my change, felt only joy at my shift in attitude and immediately pulled a whip from his sleeve, handing it to me like presenting a treasure.
Brother, don't be afraid of them. If anyone makes you upset, just use the whip to hit them hard. Whenever someone has a mark from that whip, I'll make sure they pay for it. Whoever it is, I'll take the blame.
The boy's eyes were clear and bright. He spoke with such seriousness, as if he were making a solemn vow, and indeed, he kept his promise to the letter, no matter who or for what reason. As long as there were marks from my whip on someone, Lucas would ensure they were repaid in kind. Thinking back to this, I suddenly realized something. It seems my temper has been spoiled by Lucas. I subconsciously glanced at Lucas, who was eagerly explaining his plan with bright eyes. Noticing my gaze, he paused in surprise.
Strategist, do you think this plan is feasible?
Recalling those memories, my expression softened slightly. I asked patiently, "What is it?"
We'll chop off that young emperor's head and hang it on the city tower,
and announce to the entire world that the Chu family's reign is finally over.
Then we can join hands. His expression was filled with eager anticipation and sincerity. Hearing this, I immediately stood up. I curled my lips in a cold sneer. "Your Highness the Regent seems to harbor deep resentment against the royal family?" Lucas looked startled.
The whole country has long despised them. What's wrong with me wanting to bring them down?
I nodded slightly and said nothing more. Since I was in Lucas's stronghold, what else could I possibly say? Words were futile. I stood up and immediately took my leave. Lucas tried to detain me.
If you think this method is too cruel, we could simply switch to beheading. We would drag them to the execution ground for all the commoners to witness.
Fine, fine. Anger surged through me as I glared fiercely at Lucas and stormed off in a huff. Lucas tried to say something more, but he was held back by his loyal subordinates rushing over and had their mouth covered directly. William followed right behind me.
Your Majesty, the Regent just woke up and his mind isn't quite clear yet. His memory is stuck about 6 or 7 years ago.
I kept walking without stopping.
Once he learns everything, his mind will surely change.
I took a deep breath and finally stopped. I came here in plain clothes today. Why didn't you tell him my identity? This is the best chance to take me out. William wore an expression that was hard to describe.
The Regent has just forgotten. He hasn't stopped loving you. If a move was made today, I'm afraid that after remembering everything, he might rush to end his life out of grief. Besides, he gave an order long ago. If your opinions differ, then follow his orders first. Your Majesty, his feelings for you are genuine.
I listened in silence, holding back the sting of injustice in my heart. Tell him I'll be waiting for him at tomorrow's court session. Let him use every trick he has. Even if I believe in his love, I must prepare for the worst. The next day, I sat in the high seat, ready for anything. Outside the hall stood the solemn imperial guards, while hidden assassins lurked in the shadow. It was already past the halfway point of the morning court session, yet the regent still hadn't arrived. I twirled the jade ring on my finger and curled my lip in a cold smile. Lucas, you're trying to give me a scare, aren't why? No matter. I've already made all the preparations to tear things up with H. It wasn't until the sun was high in the sky and the court session was nearing its end that Lucas finally appeared at his lesu. I have a matter to report. His voice was arrogant, just like his entire demeanor, which reeked of boldness. He strode forward with his head held high, scanning the court officials with a look of disdain. A bunch of bootlicking yes-me. The insult left everyone confused. If we're talking about dogs, who in the entire court is a bigger dog to the young emperor than Luke? All this bickering and fighting over titles, no one dared to compete with him for that Yet now he used those very words to insult Evrio. The arrogant Lucas, however, paid no mind to the strange glances from Oth. He shifted his gaze straight up to me and finally saw my fa, then he froze, his ears slowly turned red, and even his breathing grew shallower. Suddenly, he began to believe what William had droned on about 1,000 times.
You are not just the regent. You are also the father of the young prince.
At that time, Lucas refused to believe it no matter what. Now, all he wanted was for this to be true. He immediately took off his official hat, looking serious.
If you won't grant me the proper title, I'd rather not serve as regent at all.
I raised an eyebrow. What do you propose? Then I heard Lucas speak with a resolute voice.
I wish to become the emperor's husband.
I sat at the head, utterly speechless, making such a huge scene, deliberately arriving late to the morning court, and wearing a 5-clawed golden dragon robe, so arrogant and bold. His face practically screamed that he wanted to start a rebellion. And it turns out, he just came here to demand formal recognition. The court officials all had different expressions on their faces, but none dared to laugh out loud. I glanced curiously at William, who had been following Lucas around all along. For some reason, though we hadn't seen each other for just one night, he looked much more haggard, and even had a cold sore on the corner of his mouth. I stared at Lucas with a mix of exasperation and amusement. Frowning, I watched Lucas, whose eyes were bright and ears were flushed red after he finished speaking. Let's discuss these personal matters later. If there's nothing else, we should adjourn this morning court session. I had expected him to negotiate with me obediently, as he used to. But who knew that the youthful nature of a teenager is the most impatient? He took my words as a rejection. Suddenly, he flung his robe and sat down on the floor. He paid no mind to his image as the regent who holds military power. He also ignored the setting, failing even to consider that he has a child over 3 years old.
No. William already said so. I've been with you since I was...
Yet you keep refusing to give me a proper status. You always string me along and treat me like a dog for your amusement.
I've spent the night with you for 6 years. 6 years. How many men have 6 years to spare? You won't even give me a proper status. Daniel,
you abandoned your husband and son. If you don't give me a title, I'm not leaving?
Lucas's loud voice was pounding against my skull. I rubbed the bridge of my nose, waved a hand to tell the embarrassed ministers to leave for now. Once everyone had gone and it was just Lucas and me, I climbed down the platform and slowly walked over to him. As I bent down to pinch his chin, my hair fell forward, brushing against his face. Lucas froze and instinctively rubbed the back of his hand against mine. Realizing what he had done, Lucas's face instantly turned bright red. He blinked his long eyelashes, his gaze drifting away as he dared not meet my eyes. But he still tried to act tough.
This won't work on me. I need that title today, no matter what. If you don't give it to me, I'm staying in the palace forever. William and everyone else said before that this is where I used to live. I'm moving back in.
I stared at him steadily, asking seriously, don't I get called the Dog Emperor? What's this? Now you just want a title and won't try to rebel anymore. Lucas blushed, his expression turning agitated.
I got the timing wrong. Besides, what William said was too unbelievable for me to trust. I just think he was bribed by you.
I raised my eyebrows. So, do you believe it now? But he lowered his eyes, shyly muttering in a soft voice.
I was originally straight. You have to take responsibility for me. Besides, whether one of us becomes emperor or not, the future will belong to our son. How could I possibly rebel?
He stammered as he said the word, son, his ear tips turning red. Clearly, he wasn't used to it yet. If our real son were here and heard this, I wonder how heartbroken he'd be. But just imagining the serious look on that 3-year-old little prince made me chuckle again.
As long as Dad is here, Daddy always ignores me. I'm used to it.
He wrinkled his tiny eyebrows and sighed. I have no idea what this tiny little fellow worries about every single day.
Speak up. Daniel, do you acknowledge me or not?
Lucas saw that I hadn't answered him and was even lost in thought. He looked so aggrieved that his eyes turned red. I snapped back to reality and saw him. The handsome man was gazing at me with bright, expectant eyes, His eyelashes seemed damp as well. It was as if I refused him. He would burst into tears right then and there. Yet for the first time when he acted spoiled, instead of comforting him, I asked him seriously, "The harem must not interfere in politics. If you wish to be my imperial consort, you must surrender your military power." After hearing that, Lucas just stared at me blankly. He remained silent for a long time without answering. I sighed inwardly, as expected. No matter which man it is, once he has power, he won't let go of it. Lucas was no different. In fact, we had discussed this topic before he lost his memory. That was our last tender moment together before he went to battle. He suddenly said this when holding me in his embrace.
Brother, when I return, will you let me be your emperor's husband?
We had just finished a major battle, so I was too exhausted to even open my eyes. I let him gently knead my fingers in his hands. Shook. At that moment, the person beside me shook with excitement. His voice was filled with surprise.
Really? You're willing to acknowledge me? To be honest, I've been so uneasy. Although we are married, those old-fashioned scholars in the court keep trying to push women into your harem. It absolutely infuriates me. Years ago, if they said we needed an heir, and we had one already, I would have let it go. But what is this nonsense now? If not for worrying about you getting criticized in the history books, I really would have killed them all.
Hearing his endless complaints, I opened my eyes. If you truly want to be the royal consort, you must hand over your military command. At that moment, he fell silent for a long time. Later, I overheard his conversation with the guard.
Your Highness, are you really going to hand over your military command?
Don't you remember that the remnants of the former Chu royal family?
Noticing the sharp glare, Lucas suddenly shot him. The guard immediately changed his form of address.
The rest of the Chu imperial family has already been eliminated by you. Do you really think he won't hold a grudge? Besides, I've heard that he isn't interested in men and only sees you as a tool.
The moment those words were spoken, everyone fell silent. Lucas's presence grew even more oppressive as he stared coldly at the man who had just spoken. It was as if he were looking at a corpse.
Have you not noticed? Over the past 2 years, the young emperor has been completely changing the faces of his court. Not a single one of the newly promoted officials belongs to our faction.
Lucas narrowed his eyes and spoke with a chilling tone. "Oh, I'm a loyalist. What faction are you?" The man froze, but William tried to salvage the situation.
What nonsense is he spouting? If the Emperor didn't love your Highness, how could he have borne his child?
That's a life given directly by the emperor himself. Aside from true love, why would he ever agree to such things?
Upon hearing these words, the atmosphere began to warm up significantly. Even Lucas's previously furrowed brows relaxed slightly, and a faint smile touched his lips, but that person only felt William was in the way and shoved him away forcefully, continuing to act so recklessly with their own lives at risk.
If you persist in this course of action and truly hand him over, the next step is likely to be a reckoning against us.
Yet Lucas still refused to listen. He spoke with a cold, mocking laugh.
I do not need people like you by my side.
He waved his hand, and immediately someone pulled that person away, as the heir of the Gu family, raised in luxury and with every step smooth, who has now also become the regent wielding immense power over the court. Apart from taking my scolding, where else had Lucas ever been cursed at like this? Even the old emperor back then would only mumble vaguely whenever he saw a mistake, never daring to say anything too harsh. The fact that he could listen to so much before taking action today was remarkable. It was only because this involved military authority, which is a matter of major consequence. Who would have thought that person lacked any sense and insisted on claiming, "I didn't love him." Lucas is a very proud man, but he tends to feel insecure when it comes to matters of the heart. Before heading out to campaign, he repeatedly confirmed with me in bed,
Brother, you love me, right? Why are you ignoring me? Did I become cold? Is it because my muscles aren't as appealing anymore? Did you fall for that new top scholar? Is he taller than me? Handsomer? With longer legs? Why don't you say anything? Do you not love me anymore?
Tears traced his face and dripped onto mine, instantly jolting me awake. It was late at night by then. He pressed his face into the crook of my neck, and I couldn't tell if it was tears or sweat. If you'd bother me less often, I could love you even more. I felt too hot and pushed him away without a second thought. I didn't realize this time Lucas wasn't just acting like a spoiled brat. He was genuinely afraid I'd start falling for someone else. Military power was the only thing he could use to keep me bound to him. But what gave him that sense of security was exactly what filled me with the most anxiety. As an emperor, having no military power is no different from being a puppet. Being controlled by others forever was not the throne I ever wanted. So, when he asked for a title again, I just looked at him silently. I just looked at him quietly, waiting for his answer. But in the silence, my heart slowly sank to the bottom of my chest. I didn't want to dig deeper into the reasons. Perhaps keeping this delicate status quo was better. We loved each other, yet we both remained on guard. As he said, one simply couldn't rise against their own son. My gaze remained calm as I let go of his chin and tried to straighten up, but suddenly, my waist was caught by him, and I fell into his arms. Lucas's eyes burned with intensity. His gaze slid downward, fixated on my lips.
Brother, are you trying to seduce me? It's useless. I only accept a formal title.
I was taken aback by his question and realized that, while lost in thought, I had subconsciously bitten my lip. We've been together for so long now, and we even have a child, so why should I fear this situation? Since there were no outsiders in the main hall, I took the opportunity to move closer. So close that our breaths mingled, a faint fragrance lingering around me. The atmosphere suddenly grew thick and intimate. Is there really no use for this? Lucas said nothing, a blush that had already faded returning to his ear tips. His long eyelashes trembled as he suddenly moved closer. Just as I thought he would kiss me, a soft child's voice drifted in from outside the hall.
Father, did you bring anything fun for me?
I immediately pushed Lucas away. Instinctively, I wiped my mouth and turned to look at Michael standing by the entrance. He acted quite seriously in dismissing the palace maids, and only after they left did he scamper over with loud footsteps.
Father Emperor, what were you two just doing?
Michael looked curiously between Daniel and Lucas, pointing a small finger. He said,
Did Father cry again? That's embarrassing you.
The soft and rosy Michael looked just like a miniature version of Lucas, both in his facial features and his temperament. He bore a striking resemblance to him. He had been a domineering child since birth. Without hesitation, he stepped right in front of Daniel and Lucas.
Daddy, you look ugly when you cry. Be careful that your father won't want you anymore.
3-year-old Michael said this with a bright smile, but the words made me frown. Lucas is naturally insecure and sensitive when it comes to relationships. Hearing his own son say that must have made him snap immediately. I wonder who deliberately taught him to talk like this. I originally thought Lucas wouldn't mind. Maybe just giving the kid a light tap on the bottom. In the past, when he faced similar situations, he would always overthink things in secret, or he would act cute and weak on the bed to look pitiful, and try to coax me into changing places or positions. But unexpectedly, he suddenly turned serious and frowned while staring at Michael.
So this is the little prince my brother gave me. He looks nothing like you and isn't cute at all. Brother, can you give me a smaller version of you instead?
Lucas looked at me with watery eyes and an expectant expression. I looked left, and then right. Were father and son actually hurting each other? Sure enough, Michael immediately pouted, his face twisting as if he was about to cry, until Lucas pinched his small mouth.
Don't cry. I don't want to hear any of this.
I stood there stunned, while Michael silently shed tears with a look of pure grievance. For a moment, my heart softened, and I wanted to speak up for him. But then Lucas fixed me with a sharp, glaring stare. It seemed to say, don't show favoritism. I'm still your brother's baby, too. Lucas spent his time teasing Michael right here in the palace. He kept playing with him until nightfall, when the child finally fell asleep. Only then did he approach me, his face flushed, rubbing gently against my side.
Where should I sleep tonight?
I glared at him, annoyed. Did he really have the nerve to ask that? It was one thing for Lucas to tease the child, but why did he keep making him cry like that? So I retorted with a sharp tone, you sleep on my hand. I expected him to behave himself now, but I had no idea what he was thinking, as his face turned a deep red all the way down to his neck. He lifted his hands and put them down, then picked them up again, over and over, just as I was beginning to wonder what on earth he was doing. Seeing him make up his mind, I watched as he placed his hand on his waistband and was just about to undo it. Suddenly, a thought struck me. My face flushed just as much. Not like this? So this rascal had so many wild ideas even back when he was young. No wonder he knows how to be so playful after we got married. The longer you stay together, the bolder you get, and the more creative things become. I closed my eyes for a moment to calm down my flustered feelings. Lucas is already 3 years younger than me. And on top of that, he's lost 6 years of memories. So his mindset is at least 9 years behind mine right now. Not to mention he's been pampered since childhood, never known hardship, and is a bit immature. I should be the one to tolerate him. So when I opened my eyes again, I saw a flustered Lucas. I knew he was acting this way because he cared about me. I reached out and took his hand, since he's forgotten everything. Teaching him the ropes all over again could be its own kind of fun. I led him to the bathhouse, unlike the provocative Lucas when he was an adult. Now, no matter what he does, his reactions are quite childish. Those beautiful eyes looked at me helplessly as I slowly undid his clothes one by one. They fell gently to the edge of the pool. Lucas's breathing grew heavier, and his gaze returned to my face. As the clothes were removed, he became increasingly agitated, until his clothes were completely gone. He reached out to undo mine, but I sidestepped him at the last moment. It's such a hot day. How can we skip a bath? I've already washed. Take your time. Saying that, I prepared to step out of the pool area. I saw Lucas's disappointed expression without any attempt to hide it. Smiling, I placed a kiss on his lips and turned to leave. While dozing off alone in bed, I suddenly felt someone climb onto the mattress. I was immediately startled awake. Who is it, so bold? Aren't you afraid Lucas might chop you into pieces? But sensing that familiar presence, I instinctively felt my heart settle. Without thinking, I shifted back to find a comfortable spot in his arms and drifted off again. I was completely unaware that the person behind me had frozen stiffly. He got up to take several cold showers in a row. When the next morning came, I still hadn't fully woken up yet. Suddenly, I felt my head resting on something hard. I reached out to pick it up, only to find a tiger tally about the size of a palm. It gleamed with cold metal light in the morning glow. Lucas's clear voice sounded in my ear.
The military power you wanted. I didn't know I could be so stingy. When I wasn't amnesiac, unwilling to give it to you. But he doesn't love you as much as I do.
For some reason, after losing his memory, he seemed to have a habit of putting others down. He compared me to William and even their own son, and now he's even talking about the old him. And while smiling brightly, he wrapped his arm around my waist.
Don't like him. Like me instead.
I looked at him quietly. Are you really willing to give that to me? From your heart? Lucas nodded eagerly, his eyes shiny. As long as you want it, and I have it. Everything is given to you with all my heart. Looking at his sincere expression, my mood became complicated. With such pure and open-hearted feelings, is it really right for me to just accept them like Tech?
I'm not playing those mind games or forcing things.
Back then, I was just too insecure. What's there to be afraid of in the first place?
I'm young, fit, and have great muscles. Just open your eyes and look at me. I don't believe you won't feel something. However, try not to change your mind, or I might get so crazy that I want to hurt people.
Lucas said this with clenched teeth. After glancing at me, he shyly lowered his head.
I'm not usually this violent.
I made a sound of agreement, but didn't really pay attention. I understand that young boys love to put on an act in front of the one they lie. After all, I've known Lucas since we were kids until N. Not only is he bold, violent, and jealous, but he also has a very wild side too.
Since we've reached an agreement, let's write up the imperial decree. Sign the decree to make me your imperial consort.
His eyes lit up as he looked at me. I stared back at him, half asleep and confused.
Daniel, you wouldn't go back on your word, would you?
It was agreed. We need to officially establish our status as father and son.
Lucas then put on a pitiful act, looking at me like he'd been abandoned by a scoundrel.
Father, I already have my status. You're the one missing out.
Early that morning, Michael came again for his daily lessons. With the palace attendants present, he tried to act very serious and proper. Despite his small stature, Lucas could already see hints of an old-fashioned pedant in him. This made him reach out and pinch his son's cheek without holding back.
You little rascal.
Always trying to tease your old man.
But he didn't realize that in the past, he used every excuse just to find a reason to be alone with me. He would either threaten Michael like this.
You're always clinging to your father, leaving me no chance at all.
Fine. Then don't blame me for having another child with him. You won't be the favorite anymore.
Or he would try to tempt him.
I brought back lots of fun things from Encheng this time. Here's the deal. Let your father go for a few days with me. And all these toys are yours!
Or just lie to H? The tutor says you've slipped up lately. You must stay in the study, Toda. After doing this many times, Michael simply didn't believe him anymore. In fact, he was a bit upset because Lucas kept competing with him for my attenti. But right now, Lucas had no time to pay him any mai. He was happily running over to grind the ink for. In the end, he brought the imperial edict and handed the emperor's brush to. He didn't seem to mind at all that I was still wearing my nightgown. He just stared at me with eager anticipation, waiting for me to finish, silently urging me. As soon as I finished writing, before the ink had even dried, he took it and blew on it repeatedly, finally tucking it safely into his chi. To him, this document seemed even more precious than when he held the tiger towel. I had originally thought that Lucas would never regain his memory. I also felt that this version of him was quite nice after all. I still clearly remembered the Lucas who had boldly argued against everyone while holding that imperial eddy, opposing me becoming the emperor's husband. My child is already born. Does your opposition even matter? Do you understand what family harmony means? Our family matters are none of your boo signs? Dying to remonstrate. I'm not afraid of that kind of death. If you have the guts, try dying yourself. That way one spot will open up, and I can promote my own person into I. His attitude was so arrogant, just trying to provoke me to death. He even directly drew his sword and threw it on the ground, enjoying the trouble he caused.
Come on then. Try to die for me. Truly against all reason. Who gave you the guts to dare threatening? Don't you know I'm protecting the emperor?
But now, it seemed Lucas had remembered everything. He was back to being that flamboyant regent prince as before.
Brother, is it true what you said about liking the other version of me more?
Are you planning to fall for someone else now? I was speechless, but that's still you, isn't it?
It's not the same.
Lucas frowned, looking like he was about to cry.
He's the one who stirs up trouble and tries to steal my affection. I wanted to give you the tiger tally long ago, since it was a hassle to keep carrying it back and forth. I just thought I'd hand it over after the war ended. But then he forgot everything. Boo-hoo. You are not allowed to like him?
Lucas once again snuggled into the crook of my neck on the bed, making cute noises and acting spoiled. To save my back, I quickly tried to soothe him. I never expected to lose my memory, crying. He insisted I wasn't allowed to like him. Lucas was back in bed, nuzzling into the crook of my neck and whining playfully. To protect my lower back, I hurriedly soothed him. Brother, you promised to only like him. What should I do then? I was completely stunned, finally realizing who the other me Lucas was talking about. He has developed a distinct personality. One side is as playful and aloof as a cat, while the other is loyal and eager like a dog. Yet, both sides love me just as much. Michael's side story. I am the only prince of the Chu royal family, but I am not happy. My father is a man, and my other father is also a man. They are always too busy to pay me attention. When my father complains about soreness in his lower back and holds it, my other father immediately becomes very obedient. I saw this and decided to copy him. Running up to my other father, I mimicked my father's posture, claiming my own back was aching. While practicing, I stole glances at his reaction. His face turned dark in an instant, and then my bottom got a serious spanking. Later on, as I grew older, I finally understood why I have two fathers. According to the Grand Tutor's words, this goes against our ancestors. He told me not to learn these things. I looked at my father, then at the Grand Tutor's grandson. They were both so handsome and smelled so good. The Grand Tutor was right. I cannot go against our ancestors, but my ancestors are the unconventional Gu and Chu families, who broke all the rules of tradition. I glanced at my father, the emperor, then looked over at the Grand Preceptor's grandson. He looks so handsome and smells wonderful. The Grand Tutor was right. I cannot go against my ancestors, but my ancestors were the unconventional Gu and Chu families.
Hey, hello everyone. Thanks for sticking around till the end. So, yeah, we need to talk about this story for a second. Because, what was that? Like, genuinely, I thought I knew where this was going, and then the Regent completely lost his mind in the funniest way possible. This man spends entire night planning rebellion, full assassination mode, calling the emperor a tyrant, talking about taking the throne, all that dramatic villain stuff, and then the next morning, he sees the emperor for like 2 seconds and immediately goes, "Actually, never mind, I wanna be his husband." And then was paused, no, because I had to pause the video there. I was laughing so hard, and the crazy part is, he doesn't even remember him. No memories, nothing. But his body remembers. His heart remembers. One look and he's already folding. Honestly, that's kind of terrifying. And also weirdly romantic. Which is probably why I'm obsessed with this story now. But the emperor, though, that man is scary, because imagine hearing the person you love, the father of your child, casually planning your assassination behind the door, and instead of crashing out, instead of confronting him immediately, he just stands there listening like he's in a business meeting or something. Then later he walks in, sits down, and lets them continue explaining the rebellion plan. Like, that level of emotional control is actually insane. And what I like is that the story never makes him weak just because he's in love. He loves him, obviously, but he's also still the emperor. He's not about to go, "Oh, but we have a child together." No, this man protects the crown first and processes his feelings later. Respect honestly. Also, can we talk about the kid for a second? Because why is the 3-year-old already tired of his parents' relationship drama? He walks in, sees his dad crying, and basically goes, "Careful, the emperor won't want you if you keep doing that." Like, excuse me? That child has seen too much already. Anyway, yeah. Somehow this story managed to be romantic, toxic, hilarious, and emotionally devastating at the same time, which apparently is exactly my type now. But I wanna know what you think. If the person you loved lost all their memories, forgot your history together, forgot your child, and then immediately tried to overthrow you, would you forgive them? Or would you be like, "Yeah, no, I love you, but I enjoy being alive more"? Tell me in the comments because I genuinely can't decide. And if you like this kind of chaotic emotional storytelling analysis thing, I apparently do now, subscribe, I guess. No pressure. I'm just here screaming about fictional people making terrible life decisions. Oh, and one more thing before I go. This is my new AI voice. I'm still experimenting with it, so let me know honestly. Does it sound natural? Too robotic? Too dramatic? Weirdly okay? I actually read the comments, so yeah, feedback helps a lot. Alright, that's it from me. Thanks again for watching all the way through. Seriously, I appreciate it. See you in the next one. Bye!